This podcast is brought to you by Connect First Credit Union. Today we're going to do things a little bit differently. We have a different topic in mind, and we want to engage with you in a little bit of a different conversation. You know, it's been just such an unusual year. In fact, if you think about the last 12 months or so, you know, the world's been in lockdown. It's been a global pandemic. I mean, that's something I've never seen in my life. I suspect the vast majority of us, and unless we've been around a long, long time, have never experienced anything like this before. Nobody knew what the world was going to look like. But it's really interesting to see how it's changed the way all of us see the world. In fact, one area that we've certainly seen that really punch, that difference, that the difference, the way we're looking at this world is that people are really valuing space. People are valuing the space they share with those that they are intimate with, their families. They're valuing the fact that having a yard means something to them because they've been locked down. They can't go anywhere public or not as easily as they used to. And so what we're actually seeing is quite a revolution in Alberta, across Canada, actually all over the world, where people are really starting to think differently around the space they live in. They want nicer, and who wouldn't, right? They want nicer conditions for their families. They want nicer conditions, to wake up, feel good about their day. And that's pretty interesting. What's also interesting is despite all the reasons that we might think that the economy should be in tatters, that things should be tough, we're actually seeing this massive resurgence in the real estate market across Canada, but specifically here in Alberta. In fact, in the month of January, this is an incredible stat, we saw an over 50% increase year over year in home sales. Over 50% increase. We see a seller's market. The market in Alberta has not been this good since 2007. It's hard to imagine given everything we're going through. And it actually goes to break the narrative that so many of us have been walking around with for a really, really long time. That narrative that, Alberta's broken. There is no bright future. Well, I think there's thousands of people every month that are making a bet on the exact opposite of that. They're betting on a very bright future in Alberta, and they're betting on that by actually making an investment in where they live. And so we're seeing this incredible change in behavior. And yet we talk about the home market like it's a very homogeneous thing. It's just homes. It's a very, very personal thing. And that's what really brought me to this conversation today is that for most people, they got to get a mortgage when they want to buy a house, when they want to buy a new condo, when they want to, improve the space they already live in. It requires a mortgage. And I think because the way the financial services industry has kind of made mortgages seem really homogenous, it's a product category. It seems like it's just something you buy off the shelf. They're all the same. Here's the problem. They're not all the same. Yet we're starting to think they are. And when you start thinking about how that impacts the decisions we're making as human beings, I wanted to talk a little bit about how important that decision is. I wanted to start with just sharing my own story. Back in the early 2000s, I bought my first home. I took out my first mortgage. And I remember after having spent many, many years in financial services, like I was not a novice around lending, around financial services. In fact, I was very confident. Yet I found it to be a very intimidating decision. So, when I went to purchase my own first home, it was a really big deal. In fact, in my life, of course it is, right? It's a big deal in anyone's life. You're buying a house, like, wow, it's huge. And I remember signing the papers with the bank I dealt with at the time. And it was a very professional experience. I remember meeting the individual, very knowledgeable. I felt very comfortable about that. But I would also say it was very cool and very almost cold because it wasn't about me. It was a transaction. And I'm signing papers and I'm going through a transaction and I'm participating in a transaction, but it wasn't very personal at all, despite the fact I just made one of the biggest decisions I'd ever made in my life to, at that point in my life where I'd been kind of more of I was moving around the country. I'd seen all parts of this great land and I decided to make roots somewhere. This was a big deal. And it just felt kind of like it wasn't when I went through that process. And I think about the weeks and months and years that followed, you feel like you've got this burden of debt on your back, right? Like, yeah, you've got a home, but you've got this mortgage, and all you think about is, how can I get rid of this mortgage? How can I pay off this mortgage? And it stresses you out. You lose sleep sometimes, especially we all have ups and downs in our lives, and when money's working, and sometimes money works less well, and it's stressful. And when I think about my friends, the people I've built relationships with over the last 20, 30 years, they've gone through similar journeys. And it's funny, when we talk about what stresses us out, it's often debt. It's often that mortgage. And it should. It's a big deal. Now, we should be using debt to live better lives. I mean, that's why it's available to us. Because when you're taking out a mortgage, it's probably one of the biggest decisions next to getting married or next to getting, starting a business. I'm trying to think of things that can be bigger than buying a home for most people. There isn't much more substantial of a decision that anybody's going to make in their lives than buying a home and taking a mortgage. When we're taking on a mortgage, we're making a commitment to pay back a substantial amount of money. And that's life-changing. Now, the positive side is, relatively easy access to mortgages has helped more and more people get into homes. The other side of that, especially when you live in a province like Alberta, where the economy goes up, the economy comes down, we've seen it happen over and over again, is when you're taking that mortgage from perhaps the lowest cost provider, perhaps it's just, because of expediency or what have you, because we don't look at the mortgage like it is anything other than just a product off the shelf. Sometimes we might be making decisions that can be detrimental to ourselves. We certainly saw that at the beginning of the pandemic. What was interesting to me is most financial institutions in Canada became quite reasonable over time, but it was interesting to see that not all of them right away. When the lockdown happened, people were told they had to work from home. A lot of people lost their work. It wasn't immediately evident that all the banks, all the financial institutions were going to do the right thing. I'm very, very proud to say Connect First. We believe we were the first financial institution in Canada to provide immediate deferrals of payments to anyone who asked, no questions asked. And that isn't the way most financial institutions normally behave. In fact, you miss a payment. In fact, you go to many of the lowest cost providers, you miss 3 months of payments, you lose your home, potentially. And that's scary. Like, that is really scary when you think about the fact you could lose everything that you were looking for. Your future, your family, everything you were dreaming about could potentially just go up in smoke just because you miss a few months in payments. Now, people are smart. They don't let that happen very often. But wouldn't you rather be dealing with a financial institution that actually takes your best interests at heart? And in fact, your well-being to heart first. And I can say with confidence at Connect First Credit Union, we're that kind of organization. We care about our members and their well-being, not just their financial health, like what their beacon score is and what their credit history looks like. We care actually about their well-being. It's how they feel about their money. It's how they feel about their position in life. And when you care about someone's well-being, you go a little bit further than just letting somebody miss a couple months' payments because they've lost a job and then potentially bring their life to a grinding halt. And quite frankly, one of the most traumatic experiences anybody can go through is potentially losing your home. Well, I'm certainly not saying Connect First or credit unions are charities. They're not. But what I am saying is we put the well-being of members first. So when you're making a decision like a mortgage, it actually really does matter who you're dealing with. You can save 5 basis points, 10 basis points on a few $100,000 mortgage. Yes, it sounds like it's substantial, and it can be. But there's also something to be said about peace of mind. And peace of mind of knowing that you're doing business with a partner that actually cares about you. Let's talk about other industries. Let's not talk about homes and mortgages for a second. I mean, that sounds pretty boring just on the surface, but it's actually not that boring when you think about how important it is to people's lives. Let's talk about other things, like when we're buying an automobile. Let's just talk about cars for a second, because I see so many similarities to mortgages. You don't just go buy the cheapest car. You don't just go buy the car that's most convenient to purchase. Often people think about this for weeks, for months, because it makes a big difference what kind of automobile you have. Is it safe? Is it going to be, have enough space for my family? Is it going to be reliable? And these are things we think about a lot. And if something goes wrong, am I going to get support from the dealership that I bought this car from, and so on? And those are really important things to think about. Yet we buy a mortgage without even thinking about it. We just take the mortgage that seems practical, convenient, yet it can have a very detrimental impact on us if something goes wrong in our lives. And gosh, I hope nothing goes wrong in your life. I don't want to see anything go wrong in anyone's life. But things do sometimes go wrong. And again, coming back to the Alberta story, this has been our story since the beginning. This is why credit unions came out of the ashes of the Dust Bowl of the 1930s to help people, because sometimes the big other financial institutions in this country, as good as they might be, let us down. And credit unions led the way. We've led the way for almost 100 years, and we're going to continue to lead the way in this next decade of economic transition. And make no mistake, there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the future of Alberta. And it's going to be a rocky road for the next few years. So yes, I'm excited that I'm seeing people make those investments, buy new homes, and live better lives. We should be. And in Alberta, there's so many good reasons to do that. What I'm asking is think a little bit about who you're doing business with when you go to make one of the biggest decisions in your life. You know, there's one other element here that I really hope that some people think about. And that is that who you choose to do business with doesn't have just a big impact on yourself. It has a big impact on your community, on your neighbors, and on others in your town, your city, your province. Because when you choose to do business with someone who is really just going to redeploy any profitability that they make off the products you buy from them, where they can achieve the best return on investment globally, you're going to see that the dollars earned on any mortgage you take, any loans you get, might end up in other parts of Canada, great, maybe other parts of the world, maybe in parts of the world that you wouldn't want to see those dollars go. Yet when you deal with a local institution like a credit union, like Connect First Credit Union, you're dealing with an organization that takes any dollars of profits we make and we find ways to reinvest it in our communities. We lend those dollars back out to other businesses, other members of the credit union, to help them grow and live a better life too. And it brings me back to a story I've shared before. One of my favorite movies ever is It's a Wonderful Life. And George Bailey is this character I just adore, I love so much. This movie that was filmed, I believe, in 1946, so long ago, yet it rings so true today, because the bottom line is this credit union, this savings and loans, in the periodic episode of this movie being positioned in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, their mission was helping people get out of potter slums and to lead a better life. And I bring us to today, here in Alberta, right now. And our mission at Connect First Credit Union is to keep people out of potters slums and help more and more people get into Bailey's Park or our equivalents all over this province right now. And this just really resonates with me. But I know in the modern world, we think everything is so easy. Sometimes we forget that who we choose to do business with makes such a big difference, not just for ourselves, but our communities too. And it just brings me back one more time why it's so important that we really have a good feeling about the organization we are doing business with. And I guess my question to you is, if you have a mortgage, if you're thinking about getting a mortgage, do you feel like the organization you're doing business with really has your back, really cares about you? Or are you just a transaction? If you're just a transaction, I would really encourage you to think about that. And who would you do business with that could maybe change that and make you, quite frankly, sleep a little bit better at night. And again, I don't want to sound like a broken record just promoting credit unions and local organizations, but when you're dealing with a credit union, you're dealing with an organization that has nowhere else to go. A credit union has nowhere else to go. They are in your community, they're in your town, your city, your province. They have nowhere else to go. Every dollar of profit goes back into your community. Every payment you make builds goodwill and a relationship with the organization that will have your back if you ever do run into challenges. And again, no one wants challenges to happen to anyone, but they do. And when they do, be grateful about the decisions you make in your life. And I know from my own perspective, I have felt very, very good about the decisions I've made in the last decade. And when I think back to the decade before that, I felt a lot less good about the decisions I made. And And when I felt better about those decisions, I slept better. And knowing that I had a relationship with the organization I was doing business with made me feel better. And it also made me feel better to know that I was having a positive impact on others, the others around me, the people who I cared about, because when I'm helping that local financial institution, that local credit union, Connect First Credit Union, do better, I'm helping my community do better. That just feels good. Do you care about who you do business with in financial services? Because I'm not saying any big banks in Canada do anything less than great. They are great financial institutions in many respects. But who you do business with matters. And if you care about your community and you care about the people around you, maybe you want to think about who you do business with. So I feel like I've been on a bit of a rant today, and I am. But I just have one ask. And if you're watching this, and that is just give some thought to who you do business with. Just like you give thought around the food you eat. Do you eat to get full, or do you eat with food that you feel is going to help you be more healthy? And of course, we always enjoy a hamburger or whatever now and then, but most people, we're making decisions, the best decisions we can for our overall health. You think about products you buy. We worry about the fabrics and where they're made. We worry about whether or not we're buying goods that are made in factories that have children working in them. We care about these things. I'm asking you to make the best decision for your overall financial health, well-being, and that of your community, your neighbors, your friends, your town, your cities, your province. And I think there's a lot to be said for doing business with a credit union, with Connect First Credit Union, to make that true. So thank you for listening to my rant today. And if you liked what you heard, share it. Share it on social media. Share it with your network. Be sure to subscribe. And thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on What's Next Alberta.